Hello, I'm Eileen McHugh with the BBC News. President Biden has arrived in Northern Ireland to mark 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Peace Agreement, which helped end 3 decades of conflict. On Wednesday, the US President will speak to Northern Ireland's main political parties about an impasse that's paralysed the local power-sharing government. Emma Vardy is in Belfast.
One of the key parts of the Good Friday Agreement was setting up a power-sharing government here. Unionists and nationalists must govern together, but that's frequently collapsed over the years. It's been collapsed for more than a year at the moment, so there's no devolved government here, which doesn't provide great optics for a presidential visit. Some people think he might have stayed a little bit longer if there hadn't been so much political instability in Northern Ireland. But on the other hand, the big achievement that many people see of the Good Friday Agreement is the relative peace that it has brought to Northern Ireland. So we know that is what the President will want to underline.
The Russian Duma has unanimously approved legislation moving call-up notices online, making it much harder to evade the draft for the war in Ukraine. Steve Rosenberg reports.
Currently, call-up papers in Russia must be delivered in person. Avoid the conscription officer, and it is possible to avoid the draft. The new law would shut that loophole. Conscripts and reservists summoned to the Russian army would receive their draft papers in electronic form in their personal accounts on the main government portal. When they do, those individuals would be automatically banned from leaving Russia. Draftees who failed to report to the conscription office could have their driving licenses suspended and be barred from buying and selling property.
US Defense Secretary says he's determined to find the source of a leak of classified US documents, many of them linked to the war in Ukraine. Lloyd Austin told a news conference in Washington that investigators would turn over every rock in their search. Britain's Ministry of Defence says there's a high level of inaccuracy in the documents which have been circulating online for weeks. The International Monetary Fund says most economies will avoid going into recession this year, but global growth will be slightly lower than last year. The IMF said the situation should change in 2024 when it predicted the world economy would grow modestly. Pierre-Olivier Gourounchat is its chief economist.
We are therefore entering a tricky phase during which economic growth remains low by historical standards, financial risks have increased, yet inflation has not decisively turned the corner. Policymakers will need a steady hand and clear communication. First, with financial instability contained, monetary policy should remain focused on bringing inflation down, but stand ready to adjust promptly as financial developments might demand.
World News from the BBC. Officials in northern Ecuador say armed men have killed at least 9 people at a port near the Colombian border. Ecuador's Interior Minister said about 30 attackers arrived in Esmeraldas, some by boat, others in vehicles, before opening fire indiscriminately. He said there'd been a dispute between rival gangs about providing protection to local fishermen. The West African grouping ECOWAS has condemned the kidnapping last week of 80 people in northern Nigeria. Many of those abducted in Zamfara state were women and teenagers who'd been collecting firewood. In a statement, ECOWAS called for the children's release. It's unclear who carried out the abductions. Zamfara has suffered many kidnappings, often for ransom, by armed criminal gangs. An anonymous bidder has bought a pair of trainers worn by the US basketball star Michael Jordan for more than $2.2 million. They were sold as part of a lot of sports memorabilia auctioned off by Sotheby's. Nicholas Rusher reports.
The basketball legend Michael Jordan, widely considered the best player of all time, wore the black and red Air Jordan 13s during the National Basketball Association finals in 1998, Jordan's 6th and final NBA championship title. The sneakers were autographed in silver marker and given to a ball boy after the game. The auction house Sotheby's described the condition as immaculate and pristine, consistent with use.
Police in Spain say they've dismantled 2 criminal gangs who defrauded thousands of dollars from young men from abroad using false promises they'd become professional football players. 11 people have been arrested. Police said the gangs targeted wealthy families, mainly in Brazil, and charged them an initial fee of $5,000. The young men were sent back home after 3 months when their tourist visas expired. BBC News.